We're learning Tractate Pesachim, chapter 3. The name of the chapter is Elu Oivrin. And we'll start with 46a1. The Gemara says, Le'inyan tziruf tumah v'pesach, with regard to combining a tumah during Pesach. So this is a discussion that we had yesterday.
It's called a hemshech?
Yeah, continuation, hemshech from yesterday. Amar Rav Yehuda says, with regard to tumah, this is not so. And we're trying to see if we can compare the concept of tumah to Pesach. So Abaye says, that the Mishnah in fact states, and likewise with regard to tumah. This is what the Mishnah means. And likewise, with regard to combining for tumah during Pesach. In number 1, it says, as explained above, food that has contracted tumah must be at least an egg's volume in size in order to convey the tumah further. So you have to have some substance in order to transmit tumah. As mentioned there, Rashi's view is that the egg minimum applies only to conveying the tumah, but food of any size can contract tumah. According to Tosfos, the egg minimum applies to both conveying and contracting. So you need to, that's the opinion of Tosfos. Not just for transmitting, but also to contract. Echidomi. So the Gemara says, what is the case of combining for tumah? Kego in the ikapochas mikabetza oichlin, v'nogu by botzek, b'pesach di suroi choshuv, mitztoref. B'shar u'meis hashon the v'kpeido talya milta, emak pidol mitztoref, im roitze b'kiyumoi, arei hu kareva. It is a case where there is less than an egg volume of foodstuffs, which is food, and they touched this dough that is stuck to the kneading trough. Remember yesterday we spoke about the cracks of the kneading trough that had chametz in them. A little bit of chametz goes into those cracks. The Pesach the Isur Choshu during Pesach, and because of the dough's prohibition, it is significant. Suddenly, it has importance because this dough is chametz. Mitzvah, it combines with other food to compose a complete egg's volume of food. So, if you will take a little bit from each crack, together it can combine to be a nice piece of chametz. To be ultimately a violation. The Pesach the Isur Choshu.
But the way they are now in this kneading trough, they're totally separate pieces in there. So
Right.
Is it only if they touch? Is that what
if they touch each other? There.
Okay.
So, and they touch this dough that is stuck to the kneading trough. The Pesach the Isur Choshu during Pesach, because of the dough's prohibition, it is significant. Mitzvah, if it combines with other food to compose a complete egg's volume of food. But during the rest of the year, not Pesach, when the matter depends solely on the owner's objection, im makbidol mitzvah, im roitze b'kiyumoi, but if he desires its continued presence, areu kareva, it is treated as part of the trough itself, even if it is a kazai, so larger, and it does not combine with other food. So when is it combining with other food? When the owner is objecting to it, when he's not comfortable that the dough is being in those cracks. That means that the owner is objecting to it. But during the year, he couldn't care less. So if they were tameh, they were not they wouldn't be combining together. So why? Because during the year, it doesn't bother him. It's actually even better for him. It seals the crack, and it's good. He's comfortable with it being there. Maskif lo Rava. So Rava objected to this interpretation. He says, Miketani mitztarf. Does the Mishnah state combines? The Mishnah does not use the word combines. The Mishnah uses the word interposes. That's what chatzitza is, interposition, right? How then can you explain that the Mishnah is referring to the issue of combining to compose the minimum volume with regard to Tumah? Rava therefore suggests an alternative explanation of the Mishnah. And likewise with regard to bringing tahara upon the trough, making the trough tahor, what is the case? We're dealing with a case where this trough, which has dough stuck to it, became tameh. And one wishes to tevel it, to immerse it in a mikvah to remove the tumah. Pesach during Pesach, the dough's prohibition is significant. Now it's bothering him. He's objecting to it. It's chatzitza. And the tvila is not going to do anything because he cares about it. Remember what we said about washing the hands. If you're a painter and your hands are dirty all the time and you're comfortable with it, it's not considered chatzitza. In some cases, so during the rest of the days of the year, bekpeida talya milta. The matter depends on the owner objection. So you say, if you come to me and you say, I have this bowl, I have this trough, and I toveled it in the mikveh because it became tameh. I will ask you, but let me see the trough. I look at the trough and I see those cracks that have dough in them. So do you care about this dough? And you tell me, no, I don't care about it. So you're told the tvila is good. But if you say, I care about the dough, that's what it means. Bekpeida talya milta, that I'm looking at if you care about it or not. If you care about it, the tvila is not good. If you don't care about them, you're actually okay with it, you're comfortable with the dough filling the cracks, then it's a problem. That's why there's some say that we don't follow it, but some say that women's nail polish is not chatzitza. Chabad are very careful with actually removing all the nail polish, checking under. But dirt under the nails is definitely bothering a woman. Yeah. So that would be chatzitza. Yeah. That's why make sure to clean all the nails before she goes to the mikvah. You see again, she's comfortable with it, kpeida or not kpeida. She's makpid on it or not makpid. But it's amazing that it actually changes the law of what I feel. How do I feel about something?
You go into sometimes we got to use a women's mikvah to go in the morning. You go different places and you see how all the stuff to clean everything off their hands.
Right.
Then it's subjective. If you decide over it, then.
But you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest about it.
Go back to the example of the painter. Not like the paint, the water-based paint that washes off. But oil-based painters, and that doesn't come off so easily necessarily. And say he has, like by his nails, he has, and it's always there. And he goes, look, that's what it is. I'm a painter. What do you want from me? So there, it's his machshava. Hashem gives us a lot of power, so we could decide on these things.
You know what I'm taking from this?
Not yet, but I'll know shortly.
You said Hashem is giving us a lot of power. We know that the Mishnah said a person should always judge someone else favorably. So it says, if I'm making a big deal about someone else's behavior, about someone else's imperfections, someone else's shortcomings, then it bothers me. If it bothers me, it disqualifies me. But if it doesn't bother you, if you go with the flow, so to speak, it says, okay, so what? So what if the trough is not perfect? So what if the trough has some cracks filled with dough? Then the tvila is kosher. But the moment that it starts to bother me, this imperfection, this guy's nose is this way, this guy made that such a face, this guy's speaking this way, that way, oh, it bothers you? You're not
But
kosher.
if it's something wrong, then bothers you.
It also it is wrong to have dough inside the crack. It's the kli is not perfect, but it's not. I'm confident.
Yeah,
It's okay. I know it's not. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Fine. So what?
You don't have to be precise. The mitzvot, you have to be.
No, but
For us.
from yourself you can demand as much you want. But this is something that's outside of you. This is a trough. So we can say bekpeida talia milta. It's all about how you, if you makpid or not. Don't be makpid. That's what Mishnah says. Lo yakabdu melamed. You want to teach other people. You want to be influenced on other people. You can't be a kapdan. If you're a kapdan, if you're so stringent, you're so strict. You know who said it? Actually, Shammai said it, and Shammai is the one.
He's strict.
Someone is the one that says, "Look, I threw the guy out of the Beis Hamikdash. I threw him out of the shul. Why did I throw him out of the shul? Because you want to know the whole Torah on one leg. He's making a joke. You think the Torah is something you can learn on one leg?
Then
But it comes Hillel and he teaches him, and you see the guy is striving, he's suddenly learning. He says, "What did I do? I could have
wasn't bread.
influenced the guy."
Shammai wasn't bread.
But the fact is that he right, like kapdan melamed. You can't be a kapdan to teach. Teaching is a broad concept. Is not just there's a teacher and a student sitting. There's wherever you go, you have kids, you interact with people. So that's what I'm taking from it. Everything depends on how do you see it.
There's another practical application based on this. So there's some rabbis of some of these shuls who insist everyone has to have a mask. Right? So there's some rabbis, so some shuls around here that say everyone has to have a mask. So you could have two reactions to him. Say, "What? He's an idiot. What's he doing?" And be all upset. I said, "You know what? He has pressures on him. That's his way. Okay. Gagers up the hate. You want to follow the way? Go follow the way. I'm gonna do what I need to do, either circumvent or somewhere else or whatever I do. But not to get so upset. That guy, that's his thing. Who knows what he's dealing with? You're not in his shoes.
Agree?
That's judging favorably.
Yeah,
Good
Right.
eye.
good. You have to look with a good eye.
But the moment that you makpid, you're creating a chatzitza. That you're creating an interposition. Now,
Okay.
right?
That's what I said to you.
Chill out.
If you makpid,
Well, hey, listen, Rabbi does what he wants. That's his thing. I do my thing. I'm not bothering him.
yeah, but I'm saying deep inside you makpid. What you do is what you do. What he does, what do you feel inside?
What's going
I
on?
mean, I wish I was.
What's going on in there?
You know.
So if we
Actually,
makpid, you're
it
creating a
ended up being good.
chatzitza.
I ended up. I'm happy. I met Rabbi Naftali, and I'm.
Yeah, it worked out good.
But if he desires its continued presence, despite the imperfection, he still desires its continued presence. That means that no matter how large, it is treated as part of the trough itself, and therefore does not interpose. Now you're part of the whole system. You're part of the whole body. And there's no interpositions. Matkif l'Rav Papa, Miktani v'chelian taro, does the Mishnah state, and likewise with regard to tahara, to purity, hali and tuma ketani. Why? With regard to tuma, is what it states. What does it say regard to tuma? Rav Papa therefore offers the Gemara's final interpretation. Ela amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa said the following in the Mishnah's intent. And likewise with regard to causing tuma to descend to the trough. What is the case? What happens if a sheretz, creeper crawler, touched this dough that is stuck to the trough? All right, how would you translate sheretz?
Coca-Cola.
That's it.
That's at the source. You look at the highest level of translation. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
So,
Even an alligator's a sheretz.
so now,
And what do they do?
and likewise with regard to causing tumor to descend to the trough. So we have this bowl, and you have those cracks in the bowl with the dough in there, and it becomes tumor. Why? Because a sheretz touched it. The Pesach, the Isur Chosh during Pesach, because of the dough's prohibition is significant. Chametz, and chametz is significant on Pesach. It is considered chatzitza. It is considered independent of the trough. It's not one with the bowl. It's outside of the bowl. Even if the owner does not object to its presence.
Right.
And it therefore interposes between the sheretz and the trough. Veloy nachsal tuma, and tuma does not descend from the sheretz to the trough,
It's only
because
if
it's
it's
two
dead.
different identities.
If it's dead, then it's a tumor.
Of course, we're dealing with it. Sheretz convey tuma to the dough.
Right.
Now, if the dough is two separate things, the dough is one entity, and the trough is another
Okay.
entity.
Fine. Then you
So
got
because on Pesach it's significant, so there are two entities. So meaning that the trough itself is not tummy because it only touched the dough,
Right.
and the dough is not big enough like an egg to transmit tuma. That's it. Which word you're looking for?
Sheretz. See if this is-
Oh,
I think there's seven things.
So the bowl is still kosher.
yeah.
Even the sheretz go there.
Even if the sheretz touch, because it's two separate things. He only touched the dough.
One of, Sheretz, one of the 8 rodents or reptiles listed by the Torah.
Oh, so they didn't use creepy. So
Mr. Archgold didn't know the word
Yeah.
crow.
but during the rest of the days, during the rest of the days of the year, when it depends on the owner's objection, if he objects, then no matter how small, it interposes between the trough and the sheretz, and therefore the kli is not going to be tama because you object to it. If you object to it, that means it's two separate items. The trough is one entity and the dough is another. But if he desires continued presence, and no matter how large, it is treated as part of the trough itself, and it is as if the sheretz had touched the trough itself. You see, it's sometimes it works for your benefit, and sometimes it works the other way around. So in a case where you are comfortable with it being there, we consider it. So it's one entity, and then it's not chatzitza, and therefore, if you toivel that, it's fine.
Yeah.
You kasher it. But if you say it's one entity, that means if a sheretz touched it, the entire trough is tameh. But if you object to it and you say I'm not comfortable with it, so that means I have two things over here. I have dough and I have the trough. So then, if the sheretz touched the dough, you only touched the dough. It didn't touch the trough. It's another thing. No, it's too small to transmit, but it's also it's another object.
Separate object.
It's a separate object from the trough, from this bowl.
Here's something for you, David. The word trough is T-R-O-U-G-H,
Yeah.
right? The word dough is D-O-U-G-H.
Yeah.
So which is which? Is it dough?
Yeah, you would
There's
think
no
logically it would be
trough.
dough.
The
You
G-H
don't
is
say dough. You say dough.
dough, right?
Right.
So this shows that one of the difficulties of English.
Ah.
How do you know? You can't know from the word. You know, from looking at it. You have to.
Only from experience.
Right, from experience. Yes, somebody said, teach it to you have to see it. So if you
Good
stumble
point.
on a word, you could say, oh, it makes sense actually.
So the Mishnah, we're going to the Mishnah on 46a2. Botzek ha'cheresh. In the case of dough that is deaf. What does it mean, dough that is deaf? It does not display signs of leavening. Okay, that's called a deaf dough. Though there is reason to suspect that it has already become that it has already become chametz. It says in number 16, the surface of the dough has paled, which is a sign of
Incipient.
incipient chametz, which means
Incipient. It's about to happen.
it's about to happen. But the cracks characteristic of chametz have failed to develop. I guess the crack in the dough.
Yeah, because when it starts rising, it could crack.
So such dough described as deaf because it is akin to a deaf person whose external physical appearance seems normal, making it difficult to determine visually whether or not he can hear and comprehend. You see why it's called deaf?
Because you can't tell.
Because it is akin to a deaf person whose external physical appearance seems normal. You see the guy looks normal, but he is deaf, doesn't hear.
You can still speak normal technically, but usually they don't.
Yeah, but after years they can't speak.
You know the difference between hearing and listening?
I hear you.
Hear me or listen to me.
Okay.
There's a saying, if you scream, people hear you. If you talk, people listen to you. See the difference? Like I hear you, but it doesn't mean that it goes in me.
Listen is to go inside.
Exactly. Listen is to,
It depends
you're
on-
listening. You are attuned to what is being, so sometimes we hear, sometimes we listen.
But the more somebody talks, the less you listen.
Right, that's why the Mishnah says you always should try to teach in a short way.
So if somebody makes an hour and a half speech, I might,
Well, it depends how interactive and how interesting it is.
Right.
I once heard a guy give a more than a 1 hour speech on ADD, attention deficit disorder. And he said that, kids have it, adults have it, and, they lose their attention. And he spoke for over an hour about it, with people just sitting there. I'm thinking, you idiot. Do you hear what you're saying? People have to interact. Everybody's saying it like this. Everybody's like, and you said a large percentage of every audience has it. And he says, blah, 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 blah. I was going crazy because I had it big time. I wanted to stand up and just.
Back in the day when newspapers were newspapers, the first paragraph and the last paragraph, you get the whole kitzer.
And the headline.
Right, and then you get the whole thing. They could be a whole page, but the first paragraph.
Well, true journalism is to try to give you the most in the shortest amount of, in the shortest sentence possible.
I was
So-
talking about incipient. Incipient means it's already beginning. It's already started.
Like the word
Not about to
inception,
happen.
like it's the inception of
It's
something. It's the
similar.
beginning of
Yes.
something. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Same root.
Okay, so the Gemara says, "Im yesh kayotze bo sheichmitz." If there's another dough comparable to it that has become chometz, so let's say you prepare 2 batches, and the first batch is deaf. You're not sure, is he listening, is he not? Is it going to rise, it's not going to rise, it's going to leaven or not? But then you have another batch that was prepared approximately the same time, that became chometz, that you see it was risen, areza osu, then this deaf dough is forbidden as well. The Gemara inquires, Im ein sham kayotze vo imau. If there's no other dough comparable to it, what is the law? How do we make a determination in that case? When I have 2 of them, then I can figure out. But when I don't have, how can I figure it out? So Omar Rabbi Abba, Omar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, kedei sheyeh lechodo migdal nunya leTveria. The deaf dough is considered chometz if enough time has elapsed, so that the person can walk from Migdal Nunya to Tiberias. Mil, which is the distance of a mil. How much is a mil? 2,000 amas. About 2 kilometers. 2,000 amas.
A mile plus.
So if what does it take to walk a mile? Let's say about 20 minutes.
Mhm.
So if 20 minutes went by approximately and nothing happened, then it's not chometz. But if
It cracks.
it starts to show, then obviously it's chometz. V'nei mamil,
Oh, here they estimate it's about 18 minutes to walk it.
Yeah,
wonderful. I said approximately.
Good, yeah, good. So
Good.
I'm only refining. I'm not changing it, just
Yeah.
refining it.
So, thank you.
You're welcome.
I can use
And that's
some.
not even
I can
me,
use
it's
some major refinement.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Please don't start that.
So,
It's a rabbit hole. There's no end.
so it says, why the Gemara has to tell me the amount of time to travel from Nunya to Tiberia, which is about a mil. Just say that the amount it takes to walk a mil. Why to go? We just said it's better to teach in the short way versus the long way. So then let him say directly the time it takes to walk a mil. Why mention Migdal Nunya and Tiberias all together? The Gemara says, Akamashmaran. By mentioning these places, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish is teaching us the following. The Shi'ura de Mil Migdal Nunya Vatveya. That he wants to teach us that the distance between Migdal, Nunya, and Tiberia is a mil. So he's by doing so, he's teaching us two things at the same time.
The time.
So it is shorter teaching because it teaches you two things in one shot. Amar Rabbi Abahu, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish legabal, with regard to a hired kneader. It's like you hiring a baker, but you have a big bakery and you have to do like assembly line. So each one has a specific job, like in a matzah bakery. You don't have one guy that does the whole thing. Each one does a certain part. So in this case, this guy is a gabal. Gabal is a kneader. That's his job, to knead the dough. Velisfilo, with regard to prayer in a synagogue, ulantilas yadayim, with regard to the obligation of washing one's hands, arba mil, in the distance set by the sages is 4 mil. 72 minutes. Right? What does it mean? The Gemara cites another guideline from Rabbi Abahu in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish with regard to unrelated law. So, Gabol, Tefillah, and Tilas Yadayim, and Arbam, the distance is, says 4 million. So let's see what he means by that. So it says in 20, this refers to a kneader who was hired to knead dough for a customer in the customer's utensils, but the customer utensils are tameh. How far must the kneader travel to immerse the customer's utensils so that the dough will be kneaded in a state of tahara? Okay, you get the case?
Yeah.
So he has to travel 4 million, 72 minutes. In the second case is tefillah. A person is traveling on a journey and wishes to pray and retire for the night. How far must he continue to travel in order to pray in a synagogue? So how far you should go to a synagogue? Let's say you're going to Shabbos to hotel, and how far you should walk to the shul? How much effort you should
72 minutes.
according to this 72 minutes.
Right.
So that would be about 4 miles.
So there's two different things here, though. Because if you want to, if you're the kneader and you have to walk these 72 minutes, right?
Yes.
To make
To immerse the
utensils.
yeah.
But then you have to walk back too. So it's really 8 mil. When it says for the traveler,
So let's see if it's 2 and 2 or total 4.
oh,
You have to
okay,
see.
so you say-
So the next thing is to we have netilas yadayim. We said so gabol tefillah and netilas yadayim. With regard to the obligation of washing one's hands, this too refers to a traveler, one who wishes to eat bread, but he does not have water with him to fulfill the obligation of washing the hands before eating bread. How far must he continue to travel before eating in order to obtain water? Okay. Amar Nachman bar Yitzchak, Aivu Moro. Aivu is the one who said that this guideline in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, not Rabbi Abba. V'arbo Omar, and he actually said 4 guidelines, not 3. V'chad minei abud, and one of the 4, the 4th law, not previously mentioned, pertains to the working of leather. Abud, ibud is the refining of leather. That nan, for we learned and all of them that were worked into leather, or that were trodden upon for the time of leather working are toher. Chutz me'oir ha'odam, except for human skin, which remains tameh even if worked into leather. And how much is considered the time of leather working? Amar Rabbi Aivu, Amar Rabbi Yanai, Kedei Hiluch Arbo Milin. Rabbi Aivu said in the name of Rabbi Yanai, the time it takes to walk a distance of 4 mil. Amar Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Chanina lo yishonu ela lefonov irigo, aval leacho afilu mil nechoizer. Rabbi Yossi son of Chanina said, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish taught that a distance of 4 mil is required for the traveler only with regard to traveling this distance ahead of him in the direction of his destination. He's already going to his destination, so he postponed his davening or eating or needing aval, but to go back in a reverse direction, he does not have to return even a mil. Amar Ravacha umino milu and from here you learn that he doesn't go back a mil, but less than a mil he should go back. How do we separate challah from the dough that is in a state of tumah on the Yom Tov of Pesach? 35.
Great question.
The first or last day of Pesach, when preparing dough on Pesach, one usually separates the challah and bakes it immediately, so it will not have time to become chametz. The baked challah is then given to a kohen. If the dough is tomei, however, one is faced with a dilemma. What's the dilemma? Challah that is tomei may not be eaten even by a kohen. Therefore, it may not be baked on Yom Tov, since baking on Yom Tov is permissible only for the sake of human consumption. It is also not an option to set the challah aside and burn it at night after Yom Tov, because it will become chametz in the interim. To destroy the challah, burn it, or feed it to an animal, it is also forbidden, because there is a prohibition against destroying sacred food in Yom Tov.
It's not sacred, because it's tamei.
But it's Foshas challah, it has kedusha on it. It's like teruma that became tameh. So remember we learned previously that if you have teruma that is tameh and teruma that is not tameh, are you allowed to burn them together? Because by burning them together, you're turning the teruma that is tameh, you're turning teruma that is not tameh to be tameh, because it touches the,
increasing the tumah,
even though they're about to be destroyed. So over here, what is the dilemma? Do we separate challah from dough that is in a state of tumah on Yom Tov of Pesach? The problem is that the kohen is not going to be able to eat it because it's tumah.
Yeah.
And another issue, you can't wait to the end of Yom Tov because it's going to turn into chametz.
No benefit also.
Yeah. So the dilemma, it says a dilemma presented above is relevant even in the diaspora outside of Eretz Yisrael. Although the biblical obligation of challah applies only in Eretz Yisrael, there is a rabbinic requirement to separate challah in other lands as well. So Rabbi Eliezer Omer lo tikra lo shem ad shete'ofeh. She, the woman who is baking the dough, should not designate a portion of it as challah until it is baked. We know it says that when you do a froshas challah, you say arei zu challah. So you're giving it a name. So it says over here not to designate that the woman who is baking the dough should not designate a portion of it as challah until it is baked. It says in 30, explained on Yom Tov, she is forbidden to bake a toma loaf that has already been designated as challah because the loaf is not fit to be eaten by anyone. Rabbi Lezer therefore rules that she should bake all the loaves first to prevent them from becoming chametz, and then separate challah from them.
What is Harei?
What?
Harei Zuchala. What is Harei?
Okay, this is.
This is?
Reizu challah.
In which language? In Hebrew? Hebrew?
Yeah,
Harei?
it's like I'm declaring it as challah. So
That's
it's
again,
making-
the power of the man. Until you say that, it's not challah. Once you say it, now it becomes challah.
Only if you say it's Chala?
designated
Say
as
it's
challah.
not Chala?
Yeah, yeah.
It's still Chala. If you don't say, it's still Chala.
Well, if you separate dough aside, you put some dough aside, and you have no intention, it could be you're trying to make another.
Look, challah.
Yeah, but I have
Yeah.
intention because you make the bracha to separate the Chala.
Yeah, so you shouldn't make the brachayit.
Oh, you
That's
don't
what
make
they're saying.
the bracha in this
Yeah.
sense.
Ben Betera Emer Tatzir B'Tzoinen. So Ben Besera has another way of doing it. She should put the challah into cold water. How does it help? So it says in 37. Actually, it says over here in the bottom, Ben Besera does not accept Rabbi Elazar's method for baking the loaves and then designating challah. His reason is that since one loaf will eventually be designated as challah and thereby rendered unfit for Yom Tov consumption in its entirety, it is forbidden to bake all loaves on Yom Tov. So he suggests to put it in cold water. Why? So it says the chill of the water prevents the challah from leavening. If you notice, the bakers, they always say, use lukewarm water. Over here, it says to put it in cold water, preventing the challah from leavening. So, Amar Rabbi Yeshua said, Lo zehu chametz shemuzor inolo, v'vali ro v'vali motze. This is not the category of chametz concerning which we are warned. It shall not be seen and it shall not be found. Ella, so what's the way to do it? Mafrishoso manichosa, rather she separates it, sets it aside until the evening, until the end of Yom Tov. And if it leavens, it leavens.
That sounds strange.
It is of no consequence if it becomes chametz. It says in number one does not violate this prohibition unless he owns the chametz or is safeguarding it on behalf of someone else. Rabbi Yeshua maintains that once a piece of dough has been designated as challah, it becomes the collective property of the Kohanim and no longer belongs to the original owner. Hence, the original owner is not liable for having challah that is chametz in his possession on Pesach, nor is any Kohen liable for it since he has not yet been transferred to a specific Kohen. Furthermore, since it was not yet given to the Kohen, the original owner cannot be held liable for safeguarding it on behalf of a Kohen.
Only our Torah can come up with this.
It's like this is really like a judicial argument.
Yeah,
Like,
really.
the moment you separate challah, it's not yours.
It's public.
But the Torah says you shouldn't have it and you shouldn't safeguard it. So it's I don't have it; it's not mine.
Right.
And well, how do they so? But then it belongs to the Kohen. So well, it not belongs to the Kohen because you still didn't yet give it to the Kohen.
Right.
But then, well, you're safeguarding it. So how did they get out of
Not
that?
safeguard because it hasn't been
It's
designated
not-
for anybody yet.
yeah.
So
It's not you're not safeguarding on behalf of any Kohen. So Rabbi Shua rules at the end of the Mishnah that one is not responsible for challah which have leavened. Rabbi Elazar, however, evidently disagrees, since he rules that one must bake the dough from which the challah will be separated, so that it will not leaven. The Gemara attempts to define the point of their disagreement. It says in number 3, when Beseira, who requires immersion of the challah into cold water, evidently sides with Rabbi Lezer, since he too requires the steps be taken to prevent the challah from becoming chometz. So let's see. Let us say that they differ with respect to the benefit of gratitude. The benefit of gratitude. The Rabbi Lezer Sovar What's the benefit of gratitude? So it says in number 4, although the owner of the dough is required to give challah to a Kohen, he retains the right to choose the specific recipient, which Kohen is going to receive it. He may even accept a small amount of money from a friend or relative of a particular Kohen in exchange for giving challah to that Kohen. So the right which one has in challah, as well in other Kohanic and Levitic gifts, is termed tevas hano, benefit of gratitude. And Rabbi Lezer Sovar tevas hano moment that this benefit of gratitude equals money. One can receive a challah is considered equity in challah, in the challah itself, meaning you have a gain. So therefore, it's more of a problem on Pesach to have that dough. Rabbi Yeshua, and that's why he says that you have to take measures not to let it rise. Rabbi Yeshua saw tevas hano in a moment. And whereas Rabbi Lezer holds, I think they made a mistake over here by me. They said Rabbi Yeshua Sovar, and they translated Rabbi Lezer holds. Does it say Rabbi Lezer holds by you?
In the note, or
Yeshua
No. Rabbi Yeshua holds. By me it says Rabbi Lezer holds.
it says for Rabbi Elazar holds at the benefit of gratitude.
I know, but read the Hebrew.
Rabbi Yehoshua, yeah. So,
Rabbi Yeshua. So why are they writing Rabbi
They
Lezer?
made a mistake.
That says Eliezer.
Yeah.
No, but it's the pasuk in Hebrew.
In the Hebrew it says Rabbi Yeshua. So they
Right.
translated Rabbi Lezer. That's it.
No,
They made a
it's-
mistake.
No, mine says, the Rabbi, right after
The second one, the line, third from on the left, Rabbi Yehoshua.
What does it say here? Rabbi Yeshua Sovar, right? Rabbi Yeshua Sovar, and over here by you it says Rabbi Yeshua holds, right? So you is updated Gemara. By me it says Rabbi Lezer. The same
Me
thing.
too.
It says Rabbi Lezer.
Right.
Somebody called him up, hey, Mr. Scroll. Rabbi Scroll.
I think they were always getting feedback from people.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's so you have the.
I
By
have
you
the
it's
first
also Rabbi Yeshua. So
It's new.
no, yeah.
Yeah, this I got first.
So Rabbi Yeshua holds that the benefit of gratitude one can receive from challah is not considered equity in the challah itself. So one says that the concept of tevas hano, of having some kind of benefit, equals money, and the money is already in that object, in the challah. Some say it's not considered. According to Rabbi Yeshua, it's not considered equity. So the Gemara says it's really so. No, Eloi, this is not necessarily the root of their disagreement. It is possible that both Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Lezer maintain that the benefit of gratitude is not considered equity. So they're really arguing about something else. And here they disagree in regard to the principle of sins. We encountered this ho'il before.
So Rabbi, they're not wrong. If they put, even the Rabbi Yeshua wrote in Yom Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer, they hold the same opinion. So it's not so wrong.
No, they're saying that just if you're calling Rabbi Yeshua Rabbi Lezer,
No, but they
No,
share
but
the same
he-
they're
opinion.
saying it's
He's not arguing that.
But I know,
He's
but
saying if they share an opinion, so switch the name.
but the Gemara says that we can maybe say that they are not arguing about whether tevas hano is considered money or it's not considered money. Maybe they're not arguing. Maybe they're arguing about something else. They're arguing about something called ho'il, sins. What is ho'il? What is ho'il? By itchilalo. since if he so desires, he can petition a sage to annul his designation of the challah. If you designated challah and you regret, you changed your mind, and you maybe wanted to say, maybe you decided that not this specific piece of dough, you want to change it to another piece of dough, or give it from a different, whatever it is. So you can come to a sage and ask them to annul what you did, to change it. We say that since if he so desires, he can petition a sage to annul his designation of the challah, which shows that it is considered his property. Even now, even after the designation, it's still considered his property. Rabbi Yeshua doesn't say ho'il, that since he can change his designation, it means that it was his all along. Rabbi Yeshua doesn't say since. It doesn't say ho'il. Regarding one who bakes on Yom Tov for weekday, that's a problem, right? We learned that we're not allowed to bake from Yom Tov to weekday. Rav Chizda says he incurs lashes, gets some tapping on his back. Rabbi says that he does not incur lashes. Rav Chizda says he incurs lashes, because we do not say ho'ilu miklai le'irchim chazile. Rabbi Chizda said he gets lashes because I don't say, but maybe a guest will come and they will be able to eat that food on Yom Tov. The food that he made on Yom Tov for the next day, maybe guests will come. We don't say ho'il, we don't say since. Rabbi Amarino loike, because Rabbi says,
expecting guests, then okay, but he's making it for the week.
The Rabbi says he's not getting lashes because Rabbi disagrees with Rav Chizda, and he said he's not incurring lashes because we do say ho'il, we do say since, maybe they will come. It's actually, we learned in halacha that if you have a Yom Tov guest and you don't have enough food, you're allowed to make for them. But if you have a goy that comes to your house on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to make him. You can give him from the food that you have, but you're not allowed to make specially for him food in Yom Tov.
What if it's the king of Morocco?
So if it's you're saying it might be a pikuach nefesh. If you're not going to make
no respect,
important person,
a real melech, the real king of Morocco come. We assigned this.
So what you
records.
So
we wanted
so what you can do.
The king asked, "Can he come into your home?"
You can.
And you realize, oh man, we just finished.
So you can say, "I'm not making it for him. I'm saying since the king is here, so we have to have a lavish meal. So I'm making a lavish meal for my family, and the king will also enjoy it. But for whom am I making it? I'm making it for myself. I'm making it for my family. Why are we making a lavish meal? Because the king is here."
Right.
You understand? You have to.
Right. You have to
work around it. You understand? It's like, I'm not making it for him because he's here. We're making the meal. We have to have a fasted meal when royalty is around.
This is what you have to learn.
That's you start to think like the Gemara.
Right.
So, Rav Chizda, Amar le Rabbi le Rav Chizda, Rabbi says to Rav Chizda, ledidach, according to you, the amart that you said, lo yamrina noil, that we don't say since he might have guests, how can you give permission to bake from Yom Tov to Shabbos, right? Remember we do Eruv Tavshilin, and we bake from Yom Tov to Shabbos. Why are you doing it? He says, Amar le, so he said to him, because of Eruv Tavshilin, not because O'il, maybe guests will come on Yom Tov. It happened that didn't come, the guest didn't show up, so now I have food for Shabbos. Meaning, initially I made the food from Yom Tov to Shabbos. But what permission do I have according to Rabbah to make food from Yom Tov and Shabbos? Because maybe guests will come on Yom Tov. So he says to Rav Chizda, what gives you the permission to make, if you don't believe in this idea of since maybe guests will come, so why are you making food from Yom Tov to Shabbos? Who gave you the permission, or what are you relying on to give permission to make food from Yom Tov to Shabbos? He says, I'm relying on Eruv Tavshilin. So Mishum Eruv Tavshilin Sharina Nisur Doraisa. So he says to him, and because of Iruv Tavshilin, we permit a biblical prohibition. Iruv Tavshilin permits you biblical prohibition. Amar lei midoraisa tzorich Shabbos nasim b'Erev Tov. So he says to him, Rav Chizda said to Rabbah, under biblical law, the needs of the Shabbos may be prepared on Yom Tov. V'Rabbanu degozu b'gezeira shemayim grefim Yom Tov lechol. The Chachamim made the decree. They passed the decree that since. So why do we need Iruv Tavshilin? If biblically you're allowed to make food from Yom Tov to Shabbos, why do we make a decree? Because they're afraid that people start making food from Yom Tov to regular day. So they said you have to do Iruv Tavshilin to distinguish between Shabbos to Yom Tov and Shabbos to a regular day.
You have to do it before Shabbos, though?
Yes. V'chevan da'tzrichu ha'rabbonon before the Yom Tov. V'chevan da'tzrichu ha'rabbon Iruv Tavshilin is like so really, the whole idea of Iruv Tavshilin is to do a heker, to do the word is to make a sign. What is the sign? That this is Yom Tov to Shabbos. It's not Yom Tov to a regular day, Yom Tov to a weekday. And that's tricky because like with Motzei Shabbos, we had an event right in the house, so you don't prepare anything on Shabbos for you have to wait. Shabbos is over, and then you start spinning your wheels.
That's why I said 9 o'clock, not 7:30.
Right.
Worked out well.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
ACV, he challenged him from the following Breita. So I told my wife, now that we see that it's possible, we can do it more often. She said, yeah, I'd love to.
Around common.
Superwoman.
Yeah.
It was a Wonder Woman.
So, one may not slaughter a dangerously ill animal on Yom Tov. Why? Because he doesn't want it to die. If an animal dies, it's for sure treif. But if the animal is sick, he can still.
Chavarayim.
Yeah. I should have mentioned Mashiach because my wife just texted me. My wife just texted, so I said I should have speak about Mashiach. So one may not slaughter a dangerously ill animal on Yom Tov. Only when are you allowed to do it? If you can eat kazais, tzli, roasted, on Yom Tov itself.
So
Like how fast can you go
cook it,
from shechting
and
to
then
roasting? Yeah.
to eating?
Roasting and eating, yeah. So it says, Kadesh Yochel Kazai Slim Vodye.
4 mil.
Yochel Lechol Af Al Gav Delo Bailem Echad. Even if he does not actually want to eat, but he should be Yochel Lechol, he should be able to eat. Now, that is well according to my view that we say Ho'il. Rabbah was for, we can argue Ho'il, since if he wanted to eat on Yom Tov, he could eat. He's allowed to shecht. But according to you, we don't say sins. Why should he slaughter the animal? Because otherwise he would suffer a financial loss. So the Gemara, Rabbah wonders, he says,
22 explains this.
22,
Yeah.
according to the principle of Ho'il, since there is a chance that he will eat a piece of the animal's meat, he is permitted to slaughter it. Although it is rabbinically prohibited in any case to perform melachos and Yom Tov to prepare food that will be eaten after Yom Tov, the rabbis waived their prohibition in the case to prevent a financial loss. Rabbeinu David and Maharam Chalva.
My 22 is different than yours, Rabbi.
Me too.
Yeah.
My 22 is...
My 22 says the
different
animal is
explanation.
dangerously close to death.
Oh,
Is that what it says?
it's because I read 25. The animal is dangerously close to
And
death.
maybe Yeshua is really Eliezer.
You have to work on refining.
The animal is dangerously close to death. I
I'm
told you.
looking. What? Maybe I heard wrong.
The animal is
Maybe you heard
dangerously
wrong.
close to death. If it dies before it is slaughtered, its meat will become forbidden for consumption, avela. And the owner, having already eaten, does not need the meat for Yom Tov, but is anxious to slaughter the animal to prevent financial loss. would ensue were the animal to die on its own. Okay, so
There it
We
is.
learned this also, Rabbi.
yeah, in Chulin.
Yeah.
Amar lei mishum efsed v'moina gomar b'libo lechol kazais, because of its financial loss, he resolves his heart to eat kazais. The rabbi is challenging. He says, "What do you mean? Because of his financial loss, we permit that which is biblically prohibited." Amar le'ein, he said to him, yes, mishum efsed v'moina gomar b'libo lechol kazais, because the financial loss, he would say, "I'll eat kazais, even though I don't want to eat." But kazais is not much to sacrifice to eat, even when you are already full.
I just nibble.
Depends on the person.
And how much?
Depends on the person.
Nibble is kazais, right?
What
You-
is it, no?
It's like tasting.
Nibble.
here.
Nosh, a little nosh.
Look at Shmuel, I'll show you what nibbling is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Little.
Taking pieces and pieces.
It says,
It says that's what the shepherd's does.
it says, Pruta mitzaref
The mouse, he says, just nibbles on it. He doesn't finish it. He nibbles. We learned that a few
It
weeks
says the Pruta is mitzaref is a cheshbon godel. That sometimes one Pruta and another Pruta, it adds up to a big amount.
Yeah, that's what Senator Dirksen said.
It says, the Torah tells it to us, but I heard that once there was a banker who would misappropriate some of the a cent from one account, and for years he was able to make a tremendous gain from it because nobody
A few pennies.
paid attention, but it was one old Alec that looked and that's how he got
Here's my
paid.
4 cents.
Anyway, Senator Everett Dirksen said in the 60s, $1 million here, $1 million there, it adds up to a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when $1 million was a lot. There's a guy that I was dealing with who, he wrote a check for like $875,000 he took out of like his 2 bank accounts, you know. And but the thing that he was proud about, because he was buying something, but the thing he was proud of, he showed me he donated an ambulance to Hatzalah. You know, and he showed me his names outside. We walked over to Hatzalah, he saw it there, look, you know, it's my wife's name, you know, who had died previously. So I was sitting in his kitchen with him, I said, so I'm gonna tell my kids about you. I said, how do you become wealthy like this? He said, pennies make dollars. He lived a very simple life. He had a little apartment, you know, nothing fancy at all, you know, little apartment in Brooklyn, and pennies make dollars. Pennies make dollars.
I think I heard a similar saying that if you count your pennies, you don't have to. What's the saying? If you count your pennies, you don't have to count the dollars or something
I
like
don't know
that.
one.
But then there's an opposite saying that
You don't have to count everything.
penny smart, dollar stupid.
Penny wise.
Penny wise,
It's an English expression. Penny wise, pound foolish.
pound foolish.
Yeah.
Oh.
So he's watching the pennies, but what about the dollars?
You're missing
Yeah.
out on the big
Or it's
picture.
like if you buy, you see, something that that has substance, and you can get a cheaper thing of it, which won't last. But let's say the one thing costs $10, and this other tchotchke costs $1. You buy the $1 thing, 2 days later it's gone. But if you bought the $10 thing, it would last for years.
Right.
Yeah, that's another example.
So,
Penny wise, pound
In the previous discussion, Rav Chisda asserted that under biblical law, the needs of the Shabbos may be prepared on Yom Tov. Rabbi takes issue with this rule. He says, "Where did you Esivei?" They challenge Rav Chisda from the following Mishnah: Lechem aponim, the showbread lechem aponim. That the showbread were 12 loaves of bread that were placed on the shulchan, on the table in the temple, and remained there from the Shabbos to the next. On the second Shabbos, they were removed from the shulchan and replaced by 12 other loaves. They were then eaten by the Kohanim. Necha letisha la'asor lechadosor is eaten on the 9th day, the 10th, or the 11th day after it is baked. neither earlier than the 9th day, nor later than the 11th day. And we'll continue this, God willing, tomorrow.
Beautiful.
Let that be a lesson to us all.
What?
I'll let that be a lesson to us all.
Yeah.
So yesterday we learned about asking asking the Shindaled about certain things.
Yeah. It's just so.
So
They had a physical form?
yeah, they're walking around,
They're here now too then.
but you can't see them.
Right.
You would be able to see them. You would be,
I freaked out.
How about the
hey buddy, how you doing?
what was the movie where
You know it, right?
I hope so.
I think we're learning on the Gemara that one of these sages, when he went to the bathroom, he talked to the mom to go with him to place his
Right.
hand.
It says specifically in the bathroom they like to hang around. So
No, should not take the hand.
if,
should not stay alone.
33?
They come when you're alone.
What? Remember?
that's why. What do you think the boogeyman came in America?
What,
Boogeyman came. So
what was the movie where they had little animals and they put little
Gremlins. Gremlins.
The Gremlins, yeah. All right.
if surging flood waters are destroying one's property, but I'll push the call for it just because it's a short. So if surging flood waters are destroying one's property, or wine barrels are in the process of being ruined, to call a non-Jew to that place, even though the property owner knows that the non-Jew will surely rectify the situation by performing. The Jewish owner should, however, be careful not to instruct the non-Jew and not even hint that he should rectify the situation. It is, however, permitted to say in his presence, anyone who saves my property from this loss will not forfeit payment for his effort, meaning he will gain from this. Just as when a fire breaks out, it is permitted to say to the goy, to say in the presence, the fire will not suffer a loss. Similarly, license to make such statement was granted in all situations of loss. So we see, it spoke before about financial loss. There are authorities who maintain that such license was granted only in the case of fire. Nevertheless, one who rules leniently according to the first opinion in an instance of significant damages will not suffer any spiritual loss.
Like that.
Fire and water, that covers the water.
Welcome to you, welcome to you.
Shkoyach. Have a wonderful, successful day.
You too.